Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, January 29th. This is a special session of the School Board of School Trustee of the School City of East Chicago. The time is 6:13. The place is the Central not Central, but the Administration Building. This is not a meeting of the school board in public for the purpose of conducting school corporation business, and is not considered a public community meeting. Roll call. Trustee Smith?
Present.
Trustee Gibson King?
Present.
Trustee Gomez? Present. And I am present. May we please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Harris.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to congratulate you for making it to the final round. Tonight is it. The board is going to conduct 3 interviews tonight. You're one of the 3. They're going to have an executive session immediately following this public meeting. And at that point, a decision will be made. At the next regular board meeting, the announcement will be made.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Any questions for me?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank you for returning on such short notice. Again, you would have 3 minutes for every question, for each of the questions. First, by stating your name and address for the record, and just giving us a brief overview of yourself.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Mercedes Taylor. Preferred name is Mercedes Taylor. I currently reside at 4320 Parish Avenue in East Chicago. I am a East Chicago Central High School alumni. I am also employed by Franciscan Alliance Health, where I hold the position of the IS Education Supervisor for the Rev Cycle Division. I have been a member of my church, Grace City, Indiana, right here in East Chicago for 21 years, where I hold the position of the administrator there, as well as a board member, mother of 2 young adults that are also East Chicago, a byproduct of East Chicago schools. And lastly, the wife of a retired East Chicago police officer who served our city for 30 years, and we are now embarking our 20th year of marriage.
Okay. Trustee Smith?
Good evening again, Ms. Taylor. How are you
Evening.
today?
Good. How are you?
I'm very fine. Thank
Awesome.
you for asking. My question to you tonight is, how would you ensure transparency and accountability in the board's decision-making process? That's just one half of that question, okay?
Okay.
And then second part of that, what would you do to restore confidence and trust in the community with the school board of trustees?
Okay.
Want me to repeat it again? So, okay.
Yes, please. For the second,
Okay,
for the
first
purpose of the
question.
second half.
Okay. How would you ensure transparency and accountability in the board's decision-making process? You could answer that part, right, if you want to.
Okay. Kind of touched on, just going back to what I stated on my last interview, one of the things would be maintaining a transparent budget process. Again, entertaining that idea of having that mutual accountability with the community as well as ourselves. Secondly, making sure or ensuring that all policies or any meeting-related documents, any financial-related, data that we have out there that is easily accessible to our community, making sure that they have quick and easy access to our policies and things of that nature, things that we abide by. Lastly, also, to ensure that transparency and that accountability with them, also have that communication with the community, giving them clear explanation as to why we make decisions we make. I think sometimes, the community comes to our meetings and they hear the decisions that are being made, and they often come up and ask, well, why? And we don't give them the answers why sometimes. So I think I could have a good segue into your second question, how I would ensure that accountability is there. I'm one that when I've come to the meetings and decisions are made and I don't understand or I have questions, I do go back to our school website. I do look at our policies. I do look at our bylaws. And I have to admit, some of them are not up to date. So I think ensuring that we update all of our policies, that will ensure trust because we don't know where to put our trust at. Are you guys just making calls, making decisions as we go, or are the policies doing that? But if the policies are up to date, we can't align them up, so we don't know which way to go. So I would definitely make sure that our policies are up to date to make sure we have that accountability established between the community and us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. Hi, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Good.
Yes. My question is, would you happen to know what Central High School's graduation rate, school year 2023-24?
I want to say, oh gosh, if I recall, it was somewhere in the 60s, I think, or in the mid-60s, around there. Definitely not where we want them to be. But I did know that number. I apologize, but I don't know why the number 64 is sticking out in my head.
You say, what's the
The
number?
number 64 is sticking out in my head.
Okay. Okay, now my second question is, if you were selected, what qualities would you bring to make us a better school board? And what are you expecting from us, the school board?
The qualities that I would bring as a school board member would definitely be just a collaborator. I am a critical thinker. I am also a team player. I love to listen to different perspectives. I don't like just the I or me statements. It's all about us. We do this together as a team. I'm trying to remember the second part of that question.
Oh, the second part is, what are you expecting from us as a board?
Well, I'm expecting from you all as a board, definitely just bring me up to speed and enlighten me with all facts. I like to, any decisions I make, any perspectives I give, I like to back them up with facts and just give me or show me, educate me how to access resources that you all have access to. Just share your experiences with me that you have endured just becoming a school board member yourself and in the time that you've been here.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have, excuse me, I have the next question. Here's a scenario. The school district's finances are in trouble. Given the following options, explain if you're for or against the following and provide a reason for your response. First scenario or option, building closure or consolidation.
Can I have you repeat the
The scenario is that the school district's finances are in trouble. Given the following options, explain if you're for or against the following
for or
and
against?
provide a reason for your response. The first option is building closure or consolidation.
Building closure or consolidation. Trying to understand the question, because if I close the building, I may have to consolidate another one. Just trying to see how they work hand in hand. Could you repeat the pre-statement to the scenario, please?
The school district's finances are in trouble. Given the following options, explain if you're for or against the following and provide a reason for your response. Building closure or consolidation.
Building closure or consolidation. Honestly, I would have to look at the facts before me. It's a little challenging on this side of the room trying to even decipher what would be the best option, not knowing in deep or in depth what the financial status is. Definitely looking for other options and looking to see. I wouldn't want buildings to be closed. I would want to maintain them open. But in order for me to make a better educated decision or, a better educated decision, I need to have all the facts presented to me and what all the options that I have available. But I would love to see our buildings remaining open.
What about outsourcing?
Outsourcing, outsourcing resources or outsourcing,
Outsourcing, maintenance, bus service,
okay,
cafeteria, whatever.
understood, yes. Outsourcing, meaning we would be contracting outside services, which I would like to keep those services in-house.
So you're against it. Staff cuts or job consolidation?
Staff cuts or job consolidation, I would definitely have to go with jobs consolidation.
Can you tell me what you know about the ESSER dollars that the school district receives?
Excuse me?
The ESSER dollars that the school city receives?
The SR dollars?
ESSER,
ESSER.
yeah.
I have to be honest and say I'm not familiar with those.
What about any grant money? Do you think that's something that we should consider looking at, perhaps a person who would specialize or focus on grants themselves?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you.
I got the next question. How do you plan to collaborate with other board members, the superintendent, and the district staff? That's one part of the question. How would you engage in critical stakeholders to build understanding with issues that are important to you in regards to teaching and learning?
I think tying back to another question that was asked in the previous interview, building positive relationships amongst collaborators, amongst stakeholders, amongst administrators, superintendent, board members, just again, building those positive relationships, fostering trust and mutual respect. And I think a way to engage our stakeholders, even before we get to that, clearly identifying and clearly understanding everyone's role in this process and understanding everyone's roles and responsibilities so there is no confusion, there is no gray area, everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing and what to expect from the other person they're working with. So clearly defining everyone's roles and responsibilities and what they're going to contribute to whatever we're working towards. As it relates to the stakeholders, I think actually just having them come in and possibly even do workshops so that they can highlight any of their expertise or any of their areas of, services that they would like to provide or can contribute or that we would like to acquire for our district. But just basically pulling on their expertise and just having them be the ones doing the education and being that advocacy for those services that we're acquiring for them, having them take the reins on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is my question to you. What do you see as the board's role versus the administration role when it comes to everyday operations? That's part one. You can answer that if you want to.
Okay. Ultimately, the board is just tasked with policymaking. That is the main focus of the board, is to definitely just make policies, create policies, make decisions off of the results of those policies, data analysis, and based off of, again, ensuring that whatever information has come out of that data analysis, that we, again, look at our policies and make sure that they are working properly. But again, just making policies, staying out of administrative roles, staying out of operational roles and functionalities, and just stick to that.
Please expound in detail with examples on the difference between board roles and the roles of the superintendent and his or her staff. I'm going to repeat that. Please expound in detail with examples on the difference between the board's role and the roles of the superintendent and his staff.
Okay. The board is governed by the state, and the superintendent and the staff is governed by the board. So that would be just a deciding factor right there. So as far as, again, just tying back to what I just said, we're responsible for making policies and making decisions based off of those. The superintendent, in my opinion, is responsible for education leadership, responsible for staff development, and also responsible for being a navigate to their students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. See, bear with me 1 minute here. I want you, in your application here, you speak about a patient access specialist program. What is
Yes.
that?
This patient access specialist program, so my department in Franciscan Alliance, I am over the education, information systems education department for the revenue cycle division. And Franciscan Alliance has 15 hospitals, and we employ close to 20,000 employees, plus physician practices, many physician practices. Well, about 60% of those new hires that come in to Franciscan Alliance have to be trained and educated by my department. And my department creates the course curriculum, they create the assessments, and we are responsible for ensuring their success in the training program. If they do not successfully pass, then they cannot get access to the hospital and they cannot get gain employment. But one of the needs that my team identified is that a lot of our rev cycle positions, which are entry-level positions, we were recruiting a lot of young adults, mainly high school students, and they were coming in unprepared, and our retention was very low. So we were tasked to create a program. We got together, we brainstormed, we created this 8-week specialist access program. It's a paid program. They went through our classes for 8 weeks. They were getting paid, and if they successfully passed the class, then they were guaranteed a job at the end of the of the certification. That program was, we actually acquired a grant through the state so we could get that program to be a paid program for our students. Again, so we did that because of our students, our high school entry-level people that were coming in, they were just not prepared. So when we did this program, it did help with retention, and it encompassed everything from medical billing, HIPAA laws, healthcare laws, all the way to insurance and coding, clinical documentation. It's just an array of revenue cycle functional areas that it consisted of. So it was just a very successful program. And me being from this area, it hurt me every time a lot of our students or employees that were coming in were coming from the East Chicago area or coming in from the Hammond area too, but mainly a lot from East Chicago. And I was like, man, I know they could do better than this. So it really helped, and it's been very successful. And we took it to the Western Indiana region, which is in Lafayette, in Indianapolis, and they had a little area down there as well that was suffering, and it's also in the South Chicago suburban region. So it was not just in this area, but it was successful here enough that we were able to take it out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have the next question. Reading and math have been cited as shortcomings in the district. What methods do you believe are needed to improve scores in both of these subjects?
What methods to improve these scores in these subjects? I would definitely have to rely on the administrative staff and the professional staff on that. I mean, I'm not an educator by trade per se, but definitely just hone in on whatever resources are available. I mean, I will have to do that research so that I can make a better educated or formulate a better educator strategy as to what methods could be applicable. But I do know that that is an area of a necessity. That is an area that needs a lot of attention. That's what I did see, in my research. But I have been, again, just looking to see what our other areas are doing. So I don't have a definitive strategy, but it's definitely something that I am interested in, and I am very eager to learn and figure it out as well.
Are you familiar with the science of reading?
Am I familiar with the science and reading?
Of reading, science of reading? Are you familiar with that term, science of reading?
No, sir, I'm not.
For reading, do you think after-school or weekend tutoring is appropriate?
Absolutely, I do.
Do you think that, what's your position on, we have gone through COVID and there's been fault blamed on scores due to COVID, but we've actually had scores somewhat similar prior to COVID. And I think other districts have found that same thing. I've got 3 minutes and we're at 2 minutes now.
It's okay.
So, beyond that, are you familiar with, how would you feel about what they would call like a balanced calendar or year-round schooling?
A year-round
Year-round schooling.
year-round schooling.
Or a balanced calendar, yeah. You familiar with those?
If I'm understanding it correctly, the year-round schooling, is that without the intermittent break?
There are breaks, they're basically 8 weeks and then 2 weeks.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I do agree with that. They do need that time to decompress and recharge themselves and get back in the school game.
And then in terms of reading or math, if a child is reading at second grade level in third grade, should we promote them to the fourth grade?
Absolutely not.
What should we do with them?
Definitely invest in them more, probably, like you just stated, additional tutoring, additional, after-school programs. Again, engage their parents. I think it's very important to try to, and I think I spoke on this on the last interview as well, engage their parents earlier on and come up with an action plan for that child. I mean, every child, one of the things that we have learned in my department, again, and I work related more towards adult education, is that there are different learning styles and different teaching styles, and not every child, not every adult learns the same way. So partnering with the teacher, the parents, who knows the child more than anybody, and try to identify what their learning style is, what the teacher's teaching style is, and making sure that it's being applied during tutoring, and try to bring them up to speed. But I definitely will not promote them to set them up for failure.
Thank you.
I have a final question, and it is a two-part question. How would you handle the public criticism or pressure from interested groups?
Public criticism or pressure. Being in leadership for almost 20 years, I've encountered lots of criticism in my time. And during this time, I've just adapted a mindset of learning from them, taking criticism as learning opportunities, be it on my side or be it on the side of the person who's giving that criticism. I do understand, however, that criticism stems most of the times from, misunderstandings or misinformation. So I will, address that criticism with facts, with data, and that typically will subside the criticism. I do understand that, a person's perception is their reality until someone proves them different. So if I have the data to support it, I have the policies, or I have, again, just data to support my stance, and I could address that criticism, then we should come to an understanding. Now, I do understand that there's some individuals that come with a personal agenda when they're giving their criticism. And no matter how much you could educate them, how much, data you could show them, how much, anything black and white, I always believe, documentation beats conversation anytime. But if they're if they're insistent on that and that is their goal, that's when I know that I need to disengage and just keep quiet, because he who who talks less wins. So,
My second part is effective, reflective, and respectful communication are critical when presenting a message. How have you dealt with the adversity or conflict when you were trying to get a point across?
I have, and again, just being in leadership, I've had to learn this throughout the years. I approach this with the balance of resiliency. I've developed a huge, I guess, a wall of resiliency, professionalism. I've developed, just an equal balance of all those attributes that you just stated. And I don't take it to heart. I don't, it doesn't really move me per se. I understand emotions could fly high, low, left, right, and I'm not moved by that, but I just maintain those attributes that you just stated in the forefront, and I keep an equal balance, again, of just professionalism, resiliency, respectfulness, and just active listening and open dialogue also, helps with that. But those are the methods that I approach those type of situations with, and that's been helping me throughout these years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our interview. Do you have any remarks or questions for us?
No, not at this moment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Attorney Harris?
Nothing further, just other than, as I indicated before, we'll be in touch with you following tonight's meeting.
Thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Thank you again. Thanks.
5 minutes.
You guys need a second, or? Okay, 5 minutes. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll start the second candidate. Open our session back. Good evening. Attorney Harris?
Good evening. Congratulations on making it to the final round of interviews. There are 3 interviews being held tonight. The board will convene in an executive session immediately following the third and final interview. It's expected at that time a decision will be made as to who's going to fill the vacancy, and that announcement will be made at the following school board meeting. Any questions for me?
No, not at
Yeah.
the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Again, first, thanks again for returning in such short notice. Again, you have 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions. You will briefly state your name and address first, and just give another brief overview of yourself.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, let's see what else I can share at this point. My name is Christina Williams. I live at 4119 First Street, East Chicago. I am currently serving as Director of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging at Ivy Tech Community College, Lake County. I served as a paraprofessional and a special education teacher, and I've also ran a youth organization in the city of Chicago for about 7 years, where I implemented a new program. I am also seeking the opportunity for this role to just be a support to the community and to offer, wisdom and my expertise in what I've done. And let's see what else I can share. I am also currently seeking my executive juris doctorate, which is focused on education. So I won't be practicing law, but I will have the background of law, and the focus is going to be on education. So that's pretty much that for now.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Williams. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. My first question is, would you happen to know what Central High School's graduation rate school year 2023-2024 is?
I wouldn't know that offhand, no. And I wouldn't want to give you inaccurate information considering that I've been looking at data all day today for my current role. But if I had access to that, I would know the resources and ways to research that information, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I have the next question. The scenario is this: the school district's finances are in trouble. Given the following options, explain if you're for or against the following, and provide a reason for your response. So I'll state again, the school district's finances are in trouble. Given the following options, explain if you're for or against the following and provide a reason for your response. First option would be building closure or consolidation.
I'm sorry, that was the question?
That's one of the options. How do you feel about building closure or consolidation?
I definitely think that anytime you close a building, you want that to be last resort, because if we think about how many students we want, the ratio of students in a classroom and in a building, I think you really have to be considerate of what that looks like. I think you have to have designated areas that are specific. If you were to consolidate, let's say a junior high or a high school, you definitely want to be able to separate those high school students from the high school students. So I think there's a lot of factors that are involved, depending on if all of those goals and measures were able to be met. Consolidation would hopefully be last resort, because we also have to think about transportation issues and how we would get students to a new building if they don't have access to transportation or bus routing, which then increases the busing. And so that's another factor that you'll have to think about if you're already having issues with finance. So last resort is what I would say. But if we had to, we definitely have to have a strong system of transportation in place and ensuring that if we were to consolidate, let's say, like I said, a junior high or a high school, ensuring that we had the space to allow those students to be separate.
What about outsourcing as an option?
Oh, outsourcing. I think we have a strong skill set of people within here. I think it's important to gather information to see what other districts or other programs are doing. But I do think that there is an ability to use what you already have within the district to build out a program and a strategy. So I don't think that outsourcing would be one of the main or one of the first options in dealing with the finance issue.
Referendum?
Well, that's up to the community, right? I think if we put out a referendum, that allows the community to make the decision. And so if we are investing in the community and we want community buy-in, I think it's going to be important for us to communicate what is on the referendum, be transparent, be honest about what the expectations are and the plan around that, and leave it to the community to make that decision.
Staff cuts and job consolidation.
Definitely no staff cuts. You want to keep the people that have already been invested in this district and in this community, and you want to be able to have the opportunity to see them grow. And you also want to get feedback from them because they are the experts. They've been in the classrooms, they've been doing the work, and so I would use them rather as a resource as opposed to deciding to, cut them.
Finally, are you familiar with the ESSER dollars?
No, I'm not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I have the next question. How do you plan to collaborate with other board members, the superintendent, and the district staff? Is my first part of the question. How would you engage critical stakeholders to build understanding with issues that are important to you in regards to the teaching and learning?
So in this role, I would be stepping in to fill a seat. And so that means that there are already things and structures that have been established. And so my first approach would be to definitely connect and gather information about the things that have already been done. I think when you want to invest with stakeholders, you need to have a communication plan. And so a communication plan outlines who you're going to speak to, what information you're going to share with them, and the timeline in which you are going to do that. I believe that it's important to put that out there. I believe that it's important to partner and gather information from everyone who is currently sitting in that seat, because you can't make an informed decision without knowing the things that have already happened. And so part of what I do as an effective communicator is I listen. I ask the questions that are going to help me make an informed decision. And I also try to get an understanding of why others make their decisions. And I think that's really critical because it's easy to be on this side and say what needs to be done. But if you don't know the ins and outs, you can't really make a critical and informed decision. And so my strategy is always to reach out, to listen, to be an effective communicator, to gather data, and then apply what I've gathered into my decision-making process and in my communication strategy with all stakeholders.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms.
Yes,
Gibson.
Hi, yes, my second question, Ms. Williams, is,
just 1 second.
Yes. Trustee Smith.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
My question to you is, how would you ensure transparent? Okay, I'm getting kind of confused as we're asking these questions, and it's just like, am I on the right page, okay? How would you ensure transparency and accountability in the board's decision-making process? That's the first part.
Okay. You want me to answer that? You can go on with the second part.
What would you do to restore confidence and trust in the community with the school board of trustees?
Well, that's interesting, right? Because I'm going to tackle the second part, because in order to build trust, you have to have transparency, right? In order to build trust, people have to be confident in your ability to make decisions. In order to build trust with the community, they have to know that you're invested just as well as they are, and oftentimes more. And so part of that, to now tackle the first part, is transparency. When we speak about it, it's sharing information. What we need to figure out is how we can share that information. And so I know that East Chicago utilizes the website very well. I think we share information with students. We have forums. I think when we want to talk about transparency, we have to also know the information that we need to share, right? And building that confidence and that trust is sharing pertinent, valuable information that impacts the community, right? Because the reality is that as school board trustees, you all are making a lot of decisions that don't always get shared with the community, but it's being able to decide if this is going to impact our community, what information can we share and how can we go about sharing it. And so one of the things that I believe in doing is creating space for people to come in and send me emails, responding back to those emails. If I get someone who writes me a letter, responding and taking the personal opportunity to reach out and make a phone call or respond to some information that I've heard. I think it does require some time and it requires some intentionality, but with that, it's very possible. And so those are a couple of things that I would do to build transparency and trust.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My next question to you is,
Yes. Oh, Patty.
I'm sorry.
Patty goes next. Patty goes next. Is
got a
that part two of your question?
The two-part question.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I told you, we're all just kind of like, excuse us, we're only human too. What do you see as a board role versus the administration role when it comes to everyday operations?
The admin role of a trustee, definitely organizational skills, critical thinking skills. And I also think you serve as a community bridge. And so you are going to be getting information from your community, hopefully. You are going to be gathering information from parents, from students. And the responsibility of the trustee is to find ways to bring that into these meetings, to partner with our district, which will be our superintendent in this case, and find ways to address those needs or concerns. The admin part of that requires, like I said, organization and strong communication skills and an ability to be challenged in a healthy way. I think when we talk about the community being upset and them being challenged, there's positives that can come out of that, right? You can use that fuel and that energy to really get people ignited and fired up about the possibility of what this school district could be. And I think that's a great responsibility of the board, of a member of the trustees. And I also think that it is the responsibility to serve and trust the administrators and the teachers that are doing the work. To gather their information and hear their perspectives.
There was another part to that. Okay. Please expound in detail with examples on the difference between the board's role and the roles of the superintendent. Well, you kind of answered that. Yeah, you did. Well, I'll read it anyway. The difference between the board's role and the roles of the superintendent and his or her staff.
Yeah. So I'll just add to that, though, now that we're talking about the superintendent. So just as the trustees serves as the bridge or the communication for the community, I believe that the superintendent serves as the liaison for the people in his building, right? So the admin, the teachers, the faculty. And so that is going to require a strong communication and partnership between the trustee and the superintendent to get all of those voices heard, right, as a collective and apply it into the decisions and policies that get made moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Williams, my second question. If you were selected, what qualities would you bring to make us a better school board, and what are you expecting from us?
Well, I would bring critical thinking, strategic planning, effective communication, honesty, a care and compassion, and empathy and understanding for this work, a very, very clear understanding of an educator's role in this situation. And I also bring the ability to make connections with whoever I engage with. Because I am an empathetic listener, I'm able to gather information from people who have different backgrounds. I think about it in my role as diversity director. It requires me to be able to make connections with people from different perspectives and different backgrounds. And that needs to happen in order for me to do my work. And so I want to be a strong trustee, and that's going to mean I'm going to have to partner with people with different perspectives. The key is to understanding what those perspectives are, why we want to make that decision. And as I stated in many of my interviews, if we keep the student central to our decision-making process, I believe that we can find an alignment. I am of the mind that you don't have to be in agreement all the time. I am in alignment of moving a mission and a vision forward. And it's pretty clear what the mission and vision for our East Chicago district is, and that is to improve and retain our students and to give them a quality education. And so every decision that I'll make sitting on that side of the table is going to be focused on that. And it's going to be from a perspective of an educator. It's going to be from the perspective of a strategic planner. And it's not going to come from someone who makes a decision solely based off of emotion. I think we have to have a balance of caring and being invested in our students, but we have to be able to think outside of our emotions to create an actual plan. And that's really one of my strong skill sets, and my ability to gather people's ideas and be organized is what I'd also bring to the table. So my goal would be to be a support, to allow people to feel heard within the community, but also allow the people that I sit on that side of the table with to be heard, and to be constructive, and to have a healthy balance of challenge and disagreement, with the goal of getting our students ready and prepared for next steps after graduation.
Okay, then, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have the next question. Reading and math have been cited as shortcomings in the district. What methods do you believe are needed to improve scores in both of these subjects?
So reading and math scores do need to be increased. We know that reading is pertinent to all areas of academia. So whether you are doing math or whether you're doing social studies, you have to have a certain level of reading ability. That is very clear. I think we are responsible for creating spaces for our students to have creative ways to explore learning. Part of that could be bringing in content that impacts them or content that resonates and connects with them, finding ways to bring in speakers that connect with them to talk about personal experiences, because our goal is to have them see a future beyond where they're at in the moment. And so that means that it is our duty and our responsibility to seek out those sources so that our students can connect with them. And I will say, if we want to talk about math and reading, there are so many creative ways to implore that into other classrooms, right, and other classes and other lessons. And it just requires the ability to give our teachers the skills and the tools they need to do that. I think we have to put trust in the people that we bring into the space, to allow them to be those creative individuals, because as I can think about a lot of my learning experiences, I learned the most from teachers that were able to share their experience. I learned the most from teachers who really cared about the content that they were teaching. And that allowed me to explore different avenues. And so allowing our teachers within curriculum and state standards, of course, to bring in their perspectives and content that also resonates with them could really help our students. And so that's just one strategy. Again, I would say to you, you have to look at things that have already been done. You have to think about what teachers are already doing and think about what you can apply. I'm not about changing the wheel if there are certain things that are working. So I think it requires a deeper dive to say, what have we done? How long did we do it? What was the impact of that? And so I would say, before I just throw a strategy out there, you have to use data to assess whether it's worked or not. But I would definitely say finding content that resonates with our students and also finding creative ways to apply math and reading to other subject areas.
I'm going to throw a couple of items at you real quickly. We only got a few seconds. Do you think after-school and weekend tutoring is important?
I did not hear the question, I'm sorry.
After-school week and weekend tutoring is important.
Do I think it's important? Absolutely, if you're going to attend.
Do you think a person who's in third grade, but reading at second grade level should go to the fourth grade?
I do not.
What should happen?
I think that we need to have some strategies and some skills in place that could support that student before we choose to advance them. And I don't think that it's based solely on testing.
Do you think, do you believe in a year-round schooling or a balanced calendar?
I know we tried that at Lincoln when I was there. It was just one school. I don't know what the data around that would show for East Chicago district. You have to take a look at that before you make a decision. But I think whatever allows our students to succeed at the end of the school year is what I would agree with.
Thank you.
I have the next question. And it's a two-part question. How would you handle public criticism or pressure from interest groups? And part B to that would be effective, reflective, and respectful communications are critical when presenting a message. How have you dealt with adversity or conflicts when you were trying to get a point across?
So public criticism, I think that's expected. I think any form of criticism allows an individual to grow if they take the opportunity to think about the messenger and the message. And you can use that information to build out character or to identify or understand another person's concern. But to engage with criticism, I can't say that that has ever been something that I've done, but I do like to be aware of how people believe I present, right? And so I do think that it would be important to take that information, but I definitely wouldn't engage with it because I think it's expected. One of the things I always share is in the beginning, I build those trusting relationships. In the beginning, I identify who I am. In the beginning, I present who I am so that public criticism becomes at a minimal. And however I present here before you, I also present in the community. So public criticism wouldn't engage with too much. The next part of the question was about being reflective, effective, and critical in regards to, could you repeat that again in regards to what?
Let me repeat the second part. Effective, reflective, and respectful communications are critical when presenting a message. How have you dealt with adversity or conflict when you were trying to get your point across?
Oh, absolutely. So just recently, I told you I ran a youth organization in Chicago, and one of the challenges we had is we were transitioning from the program being inside of a youth facility to a community program. And so with that comes different requirements to build out this program. And so although something was done one way within the facilities, it was my responsibility to translate all of that information and all the things that were happening in that program to an outside community program. And so a lot of our stakeholders weren't sure about what that process was. It was new. It was unfamiliar. I was building out a program. That's what I was hired to do. I was hired to build out this program, to grow it so that it becomes replicable. And so in doing that, I had stakeholders who were not sure about what's happening. But it was my responsibility to plan it out and to continue to communicate why this worked. And again, I go back to it, but I go back to data. The numbers speak for themselves. And so if you can always reference data any bit of data. It doesn't have to be huge numbers, but if you can always reference data when communicating, I think that that's really important in getting your point across. I think that being intentional about conversations and what you share is part of being respectful and being a critical thinker. It just requires the ability to see information and translate that for people who may not always have a clear understanding of what's happening. And so that's part of what I did. And I built out that program, and it's replicable. We, in fact, garnered over $1 million to get a build out for a building. And so that was me communicating with the community about the work that was happening, and they began to invest in it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our interview for today. Do you have any final remarks, closing remarks, or questions for us?
Just final remarks. I do want to say that I do appreciate the intentionality and the thoughtfulness around these questions and around this process. I really hope that it is an opportunity to show the community that you are invested in the students and that you're invested in the person that sits in this role. And I will say that although I don't know about some of the financials, I've managed a budget, over a $2 million budget on my own. And I understand forecasting, and I understand how you build out a multi-year budget. And so although I may not know all of the language and terminology, I'm a fast learner. I am focused on education, and I think I would be a great candidate to help support and work with you all as we build up the East Chicago community and the school district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Harris?
So the board will go into executive session following the interviews, and the expectation is shortly thereafter they'll make a decision and be in touch with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a 3-minute recess for our next candidate. applicant. Attorney Harris?
Good evening. In today's interview, you'll be asked questions from all the board members that are present. It's anticipated that your interview will last approximately 30 minutes. As I did with all the other candidates, I'd like to congratulate you for making it to the final round. Immediately following this meeting, the board's going to go into executive session and have some discussion regarding the interviews. Shortly thereafter, we anticipate the board to make a decision and be in contact with you regarding the final appointment.
All right.
Any questions for me?
No, not at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank you for returning at such short notice. Again, you have 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions, first by stating your name and address, and we'll give you a couple minutes for a brief overview of yourself.
All right, sounds good. So we're good?
You
All
can
right.
get started.
All right, so my name is Jose Arteaga, and I live at 1110 West 145th Street. I am currently an educator at Bishop Knoll. I am an alum from Bishop Knoll, and after Bishop Knoll, I went to St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana. And at St. Joseph's College, I studied communication and political science. Once that was done, I decided that I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. So I thought the best answer would be to go get some more education. So I went to grad school at Purdue Northwest to study communication. And my plan was to go into public relations or marketing, something in that field. And then my graduate advisor said, hey, there's these opportunities for you to be a teaching assistant. Would you like to do that? You could pay for some of your schooling. And I said, yes, that sounds fantastic. Even though I really have no interest in going into education, I will go ahead and do that so I can help pay for some grad school. And then just that first day, I just really fell in love with being in the classroom, talking with the students, and just kind of helping them on through their own academic and also just life journey. So I've really kind of fell in love with education. Then I graduated. I was an adjunct faculty member at Indiana University Northwest, Purdue Northwest, and right here at Ivy Tech Community College, where I am still an adjunct. I teach public speaking courses, workplace communication courses in the evening. And like I said, I teach them at the East Chicago campus. And that too, I absolutely love working with those young adults, especially fresh out of high school. Some of them might have taken a couple years break. I just really like doing that on the side. But then, of course, like my full-time job, I was a teacher at Whiting High School for I believe it was 3 years. I was an English teacher. And then I made a transition both in subject matter and also my job. Now I'm at Bishop Knoll, and I teach social studies. And I am also a football coach and track coach. So like I said, I just love being involved with the students during the day. And then also I get a great responsibility of working with them after school, like I said, as a coach, but also I am also a speech and debate coach. So I help them kind of practice their own public speaking craft too. So that's just a little bit about me, and I look forward to talking with you all today.
Thank you. Trustee Gomez?
I have the first question. The scenario is this: the school district's finances are in trouble. Given the following options, explain if you're for or against the following, and provide a reason for your response. So I repeat, this is a scenario. The school district's finances are in trouble, and given the following options, explain if you're for or against, and provide a reason for your response. So the first option that I'm presenting is building closure consolidation.
Oh, that's a tough one. I will try my best. Well, I think if there was a building closure or consolidation, I would have to make sure that we have looked at each other possible scenario before we made that decision. in this scenario. So whether it is looking at outsourcing some jobs, whether it's limiting the amount of staff that we have in the building, again, these are all, it's a terrible situation, terrible scenario, but I think these are some of the things that we need to look about before we start having a discussion on like a school closure or consolidation. I think we also have to make sure that, and this might be part of that second follow-up question, but I think we also just have to make sure that we have community involvement in making that decision, making sure that we talk with the parents, talk with the students themselves, the faculty and staff that might be moved around, or sadly, their jobs will probably be no longer needed. It'll be a very tough scenario that we would find ourselves in a way to make a decision, but also to communicate that decision with the greater community.
The other option might be a referendum. How would you stand on a referendum, for or against?
I'm just thinking about the past referendums in our area. I look back at the Whiting referendum and the Hammond referendum, and they both failed. And then I even look back at the Highland referendum that they had that also failed in the last couple of months. So in that scenario, I would have to look to make sure that we have made the best decisions before we ask the taxpayers to support a referendum. I think if we were in that situation, I, of course, would be an advocate for the referendum, because ultimately, I think the best thing that we can do for our community is have good schools. And if that referendum provides good paying jobs, it provides good adults in these buildings, I think that you cannot put a cost at that. And I would try to sell the message to the community saying that this referendum, sure, it might be an extra $30 a month, but it's going to leave a huge impact in our community, making sure that we have good people in charge and making sure that the students have the resources that they need in order to succeed.
You mentioned outsourcing already, so I won't touch on that, and we're limited on time. Are you familiar with the ESSER dollars?
The ESSER, the Emergency Relief COVID?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you happen to know when they expire?
I believe it was in 3 parts, and I believe we are kind of close to the second part, or sorry, to the last part. Because I was dealing with the ESSER funds when I was teaching at Whiting, and I believe it was September, I believe it was this year that it was the final year for those fundings. So I believe it was sometime in September or October of 2024. Sorry, long/short answer.
Thank you. You beat the clock. Thank you.
I have the next question. How do you plan to collaborate with other board members, superintendents, and district staff? That's the first part of that question. The second part would be, how would you engage in critical stakeholders to build understanding with issues that are important to you in regards to teaching and learning?
I think one of the first things I would do is obviously reach out to all of you, probably take us out to breakfast or lunch to just get to know each other, and so we can still start building a relationship. When it gets to like the greater community, I think one thing is just to be visible, and I think the visibility comes with going to a basketball game, going to a tennis match, seeing a play production, really kind of get invested with the kids, and then ultimately meet their families, whether it's parents, whether it's aunts and uncles, just kind of meeting the community members that way. I think that's how you start building relationships. If they see us or they see myself out in the community, I think it's a lot easier to I think it's a lot easier for someone to approach you and ask for advice or even ask for help. I think that's really kind of just the bedrock of all of our relationships, especially in a relationship, in a special relationship that we're going to have with the greater community.
Thank you. Trustee Smith?
Good evening. My question to you, how would you ensure transparency and accountability in the board's decision-making process?
I think the one thing that we need to do when it gets to transparency is make sure that we are all on the same page. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we all have to agree with each other, but it just needs to make sure that we're all on the same page. I've worked with boards in the past, and a lot of times there's disgruntledness on the board, or there's this disgruntledness, like you can feel the white elephant, or I'm sorry, the elephant in the room.
Very right.
Yeah. So I think the one thing is that just to kind of acknowledge like a situation, you know, and say, hey, let's just address the elephant in the room. Let's talk about it. There's no reason for any of us to go days or weeks of just not talking and discussing whatever our issues might be. So I believe that's kind of, it went back to transparency, but just kind of just being open. Don't hide behind your feelings, or don't. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. So just communication.
There's another part to this
Okay.
question. But, okay. What would you do to restore confidence and trust in the community with the school board?
I think when you're talking about just building trust, it's, you know, just going out there and showing up at events. I think that says a lot to the community that we are supporting our students. So that's one thing that I think would be truly beneficial in building that transparency. That way they kind of see you at a sporting event, or they see you at a dance recital, or they see you at a play or at a tennis match, and they might say, oh, I've seen that person before. Let me go and talk to them. You know, or especially if they might see me at the grocery store or at one of the restaurants, they can say, hey, I saw you were at the game. You know, I just had a real quick question about X, Y, and Z. I think that's one way to build transparency.
Your time's up.
Okay.
Trustee Gibson?
Yes, hi, how you doing?
Oh, fine.
Yes, my question is, if you were selected, what qualities would you bring to make us a better school board? And what are you expecting from us?
I think what I can bring is a perspective from an educator, and when I mean an educator, I mean a teacher, someone that is with students every day. Now, of course, I'm not with East Chicago students every day, but the students that I work with are similar in backgrounds, whether that's white, Hispanic, or black students. And working with those students, I see the issues that they deal with, and the issues that deal with our community, of students that might not be able to afford lunch or breakfast, and they're really looking forward to that school lunch, and they're finishing it. Or whether it's them not being able to afford school supplies. I think these are things that really truly impact our kids, and not a lot of detail is really geared towards that. So I think that's something that I can bring, just that perspective. The other one is that I am an educator, and I'm actually, like I said, I'm a former English teacher, so I am licensed to teach English. And one of the things that we need to work on is to boost our English and our math scores. So I think that's something that I can partner with you all with, kind of giving me that background of being an English teacher, but also work with the administration, whether it's the district administration or the building principals, I can give them advice of things that have worked maybe in my classroom or at my previous schools, and see if maybe we can implement some of those things here.
Okay, thank you.
I have the next question. You just mentioned reading and math. So reading and math have been cited by others as shortcomings in our district. What methods do you believe are needed to improve scores in both of these subjects?
I'm trying to think, where should I start? I'll start with, I guess, the younger kids. So I'll talk about primary, and then I'm going to go basically my way up. So with the primary kids, I think one of the things that I noticed in one of the past board meetings, you have implemented the science of reading. And I think the science of reading is really going to be beneficial for our first and second graders as they start to learn how to read. There are a couple different pillars to that science of reading. It first starts off with understanding phonics, and then it gets into language, and it goes basically through all the steps until the final step is comprehension. So I think it's getting that program really off of paper into the classroom with all of our staff members and our faculty members. I think that that's going to be a huge benefit. I also think that one of the things that we need to work on is our NWEA scores, scores that our middle school students and especially our high school students take. And in my experience, I've used that as benchmarks for my students. So they take it in the fall, and then they take it again in the spring. And I think that's a very clear indication of just how well our students are doing with like state standards. And then another reason that I can kind of bring is, and this might go hand in hand with science and reading scores, but it also has to do with graduation requirements. At my school, I'm a dual credit teacher, so I teach the dual enrollment, U.S. history, U.S. government, and dual enrollment speech. And I think just with that aspect of making sure, because the state has all these requirements to graduate kids, and it almost looks like a bingo checklist, making sure that the kids know everything that they're supposed to take. So I think just offering that expertise and kind of looking at outside organizations and making sure that we have qualified teachers that have their master's degree that can teach those classes, I think it's going to be a lot easier than the kids taking AP exams, which there's a whole issue with College Board out there. But I think that's one benefit that I can also bring into this role.
Running short on time, so just a quick question here. Child's in third grade and they're reading at second grade level. Should they be moved to the fourth grade?
I will, my heart says no, but then I also don't want to leave any kid behind. So I think that that's a discussion we're going to have with the building administrators and the administration, the district administration, to make sure that we don't leave children behind, but we also push our children. Now, a way to kind of solve that is by obviously providing a robust tutoring system in place, either before school, after school, during lunch, during recess, and also making sure that we have after-school programs that can help them out. And then I think that for those students, I think it's really important to have school year rounding too. So maybe have an opportunity during winter break for those students to catch up, or work with them during the summer. And work with them during the summer.
This is a two-part question.
Okay.
First part, how would you handle public criticism or pressure from interest groups? The second part to that, or unless you want to answer the first.
Interest groups defined as,
I would say probably lobbyists, corporations.
okay. With the interest groups, I think that is, well, one thing that you really need to partner with, especially the way that education is in our state. It puts a lot of districts like ourselves in kind of a stranglehold. So I wouldn't be opposed to building those connections with Democrats, Republicans, just so we can try to get the best education for our students, whether that's more funding, whether that's for grants for, like I said, you know, I look at some of our Black and Hispanic kids, and I really think the one thing that they need is representation in the schools. So even if we can partner with the state and have the state maybe come up with incentive programs for young Hispanic and young Black Americans to kind of come into the fold, into education, I think that that's something that could obviously have an impact not only in our school city, but also just kind of throughout the whole state. So I am willing to work with those lobbying groups and also with the politicians down in Indianapolis.
The next part to the question would be effective, reflective, and respectful communications are critical when presenting a message. How have you dealt with adversity or conflict when you are trying to get your point across?
Well, as an educator, you are always trying to get your point across. So I think there's two things: to be clear and concise. I think when you are issuing a message, whether it's on an email or whether it's on paper, to be clear and short. And when you are talking with the public, I think that you need to provide as much details as you can. So it might be scripting out a statement and reading from the statement and really thinking about what you are putting on that statement. So I think that's a couple things that we can work on. I think those are achievable, but I think that that's going to make a huge impact in the way that we get the respect from the community.
Thank you. Trustee Smith?
Question to you is, what do you see as a board's role versus the comes to everyday operations?
Well, when it comes to everyday operations, that's really the superintendent and their team. That is the building principals. I've had some great administrators. I've also had some not great administrators, but I think that having that respect for them, because they're the ones in the classroom and in their buildings every day, I think that that's something that I would definitely look for their expertise. I'm sorry, I believe there was a second part.
And my second part is, please expound in detail with examples on the difference between the board's role and the roles of the superintendent and his or her staff.
Yeah, when it comes to the board, we are really an advisory board, I believe, to the superintendent. Now, of course, as an advisory board, we also have special duties as hiring a superintendent, making sure that we're building our district level administration, making sure that we are advocating for public education, and we are also passing a budget for the school year, and also making sure that we are getting the contracts out for our teachers, for our staff members, for our administration. So it's more of an advisory role with a lot of communication and a lot of dialogue with the administration.
Trustee Gibson King?
Yes. Hi, my second part of the question is, would you happen to know what Central High School's graduation rate school year 2023-2024?
The graduation rate? I think it was somewhere in the 60s. I want to say in the lower 60s, 63, 62, compared to the national average, which was, I believe, in 75. Give or take a couple numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that concludes our interview for today. Do you have any last remarks, or do you have any questions for the board?
Just when it comes to last remarks, I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today, and also for interviewing with you for the past couple days. It's School Board Appreciation Month. And I think, when you think about that, I think you guys have a great opportunity because you get to choose someone that you're willing to work with for the rest of this calendar year. So I just want to thank you all for the dedication that you give to the school city of East Chicago, and also to the greater community of East Chicago. Because in any level of education that you're in, education is not an easy job. And we have to make a lot of difficult decisions, and we have to pray that we make the right decisions. So I just wanted to thank you for that. Hopefully, I'm lucky enough to be able to work with you and just advance the schools in East Chicago into the next couple of years. I think the next couple of years, just with everything that's happening in the world and with everything that's happening in education, is going to be really crucial. And I would love to be a part of that decision-making with you all. So just thank you very much. Thank you for this evening, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Attorney Harris?
The board will be convening immediately following this meeting in executive session, and in the coming days, we'll be in touch with you with a final decision. Okay, thank you.
Well, that concludes our interviews for this evening. Let's do a roll call to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Trustee Gibson King. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Smith. Roll call, Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Trustee Gibson King?
Yes.
Trustee Gomez?
Yes.
And yes for me. That concludes our interview for this evening. Thank you very much for coming out.